Fix these habits now, or 2026 will break you. The world is not suddenly becoming difficult. It has always been uncertain, unstable, and indifferent to individual hopes. What has changed is the way people meet it. Many now live with constant stimulation, constant opinion, constant pressure to react, yet very little inner order. The result is not dramatic collapse, but gradual erosion. Attention weakens, judgment softens, emotions begin to rule where reason once stood. The year ahead will not break anyone by force. It will do so quietly, through habits left unexamined, through anger indulged instead of understood, through fear rehearsed daily until it feels like truth, through distraction accepted as normal. These patterns do not announce themselves as dangerous. They feel ordinary. That is why they endure. Stoic philosophy begins from a simple and demanding position. Life is difficult, and pretending otherwise only adds confusion. The task is not to control events, but to govern oneself, not to escape uncertainty, but to stand firmly within it. This requires discipline, not optimism, clarity, not reassurance. Many carry the belief that peace will come later, once circumstances improve. The Stoics rejected this completely. They understood that waiting for external order is a way of surrendering inner authority. Time does not correct character, only practice does. The coming year will amplify what already exists. Weak habits will weaken further. Strong ones will stabilize. This is not fate acting against you. It is nature responding to consistency. Every neglected discipline has a cost. Every cultivated virtue compounds quietly. This reflection is not offered as a warning, but as an opportunity to see clearly. Nothing here demands urgency or fear, only attention, only honesty, only the willingness to stop carrying habits that no longer serve reason, dignity, or calm. Modern life trains the mind to move constantly, but rarely to rest in clarity. Attention is pulled outward, again and again, toward what is loud, immediate, and emotionally charged. Over time, this movement becomes automatic. Thought follows stimulus without pause. Reaction replaces judgment. Many do not notice this shift until anxiety feels permanent and calm feels unfamiliar. The Stoics understood attention as a moral act. What you allow into your mind repeatedly shapes your character. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. This was not metaphorical, it was practical. If the mind is fed disorder, outrage, and fear, it will produce the same in response. If it is trained toward clarity and restraint, it responds with steadiness. One of the most damaging modern habits is the belief that everything deserves a response. Every headline, every message, every opinion appears to demand immediate emotional engagement. This is false. Most events do not require your judgment at all. Epictetus was precise about this. He taught that impressions arrive uninvited, but assent is optional. The failure lies not in receiving impressions, but in granting them authority without examination. Anger often feels justified because it arrives quickly. Fear feels rational because it imagines preparation. But speed is not wisdom. The Stoic discipline of pause is what interrupts this cycle. Between impression and response, there is space. In that space lies freedom. Without it, behavior is predictable and easily manipulated. Many confuse awareness with control. Knowing what is happening in the world does not mean being mentally consumed by it. Information without judgment is harmless. Information fused with emotion becomes corrosive. The Stoic does not seek ignorance, but proportion. To know what is relevant and to refuse what is not. Another habit that weakens the mind is the constant rehearsal of imagined futures. Anxiety is rarely about the present moment. It is about a story projected forward, rehearsed repeatedly, until it feels inevitable. Seneca warned that people suffer more in imagination than in reality. This remains accurate. The future, when it arrives, rarely matches the script written by fear. Stoic practice does not deny planning, it denies obsession. You prepare where preparation is possible, then you release the rest. Anything beyond that is not prudence, but self-torment. Fate will unfold according to causes larger than individual. Resisting this truth only drains energy needed for what is actually within reach. Control for the Stoic is narrow but powerful. You control your judgments, your intentions, your actions. You do not control outcomes, opinions, or the behavior of others. Modern culture encourages the opposite belief. It suggests that outrage can force compliance, that anxiety can prevent loss, that constant vigilance equals responsibility. These beliefs exhaust the mind while producing little effect. Social pressure is another arena where attention collapses. Approval and rejection now arrive instantly, quantified and public. Many adjust their views, tone, and even values to avoid discomfort. This is not adaptation, it is surrender. Epictetus reminded his students that if you wish to improve, you must be content to appear foolish or indifferent in the eyes of others. External validation was never a stable foundation for inner order. The habit of comparison is especially corrosive. It shifts focus from what is sufficient to what is lacking, from character to appearance, from effort to outcome. Comparison thrives in environments where visibility is constant and context is absent. The Stoics understood that another person's success or failure says nothing about your own moral condition. To forget this is to hand your peace to forces you cannot direct. Attention, once scattered, must be reclaimed deliberately. This does not require withdrawal from society or rejection of technology. It requires boundaries, limits on exposure, intentional silence, moments where the mind is allowed to settle without input. Marcus Aurelius wrote much of his philosophy while surrounded war, politics, and responsibility. Calm was not the absence of noise, but the refusal to internalize it. Another destructive habit is mistaking emotional intensity for authenticity. Many believe that expressing every feeling is a form of honesty. The Stoics disagree. They did not suppress emotion through denial, but through understanding. Emotions are signals, not commands. To feel anger is human. To act blindly from it is optional. Rational control does not eliminate feeling. It places feeling under examination. Why is this reaction occurring? What judgment produced it? Is that judgment accurate? This internal dialogue weakens impulsive behavior and strengthens self-respect. Over time, emotions lose their volatility because they are no longer treated as authority. The modern individual often feels overwhelmed, not because life is unbearable, but because the mind is undisciplined. Too many inputs, too many judgments, too little hierarchy of importance. The Stoic response is simplification, not of life's responsibilities, but of mental clutter. You do fewer things inwardly, but you do them well. Sleep, work, conversation, and solitude all suffer when attention is fragmented. Discipline restores coherence. It does not promise comfort, but it produces reliability. A person who can govern their attention can endure pressure without breaking. They become harder to provoke, harder to manipulate, and harder to exhaust. The year ahead will reward this discipline quietly. While others react, you will observe. While others panic, you will prepare. While others argue endlessly about what cannot be changed, you will act where action is possible. This is not superiority. It is alignment with reality. No external system will grant this stability. No authority will impose it for you. It is built through repeated, often unremarkable choices: to pause, to refuse unnecessary engagement, to examine judgments before accepting them, to remember daily what lies within your control and what does not. Without this foundation, other virtues cannot stand. Courage without clarity becomes recklessness. Desire without restraint becomes dependence. Justice without self-command becomes resentment. Attention is the first gate. If it remains unguarded, everything that follows will be compromised. This is where Stoic practice begins, not with grand declarations, but with the quiet reclamation of the mind. Desire is not a flaw in itself. It is a natural movement of the mind toward what appears good. The danger lies in how easily appearances deceive. Modern life surrounds people with signals designed to provoke wanting without reflection. More status, more comfort, more recognition, more certainty. The habit of wanting becomes constant, but satisfaction remains brief. This is not a personal failure. It is the predictable result of unexamined desire. The Stoics treated desire as something to be trained, not indulged or suppressed blindly. Epictetus was direct about this. If you desire what is not within your control, you make yourself vulnerable to disappointment by design. This vulnerability does not make one more alive or ambitious. It makes one dependent on circumstances, on other people's choices, on forces that cannot be commanded. Much of modern dissatisfaction comes from confusing preference with necessity. Comfort becomes something one feels entitled to. Recognition becomes proof of worth. Ease becomes a standard rather than a bonus. When these expectations are not met, frustration appears, often followed by resentment. The Stoics recognized this pattern clearly. They understood that suffering often begins not with loss, but with the belief that something owed was taken away. Attachment operates quietly. It forms through repetition. A lifestyle becomes familiar, then expected, then defended emotionally. A role becomes identity. An outcome becomes a measure of self-respect. When any of these are threatened, the reaction feels personal, even when the event itself is neutral. Stoic discipline aims to loosen these attachments, not to create detachment from life, but to prevent enslavement to condition. Seneca warned against building happiness on what can be removed. He observed that the mind becomes anxious, not when it lacks something, but when it clings to it. Possession creates fear of loss. Achievement creates fear of decline. Approval creates fear of rejection. None of these fears improve conduct. They only narrow perception. Modern culture often frames desire as self-expression. To want strongly is portrayed as authenticity. To restrain desire is portrayed as repression. The Stoics rejected this framing. They saw restraint as freedom. A person who can want less is not deprived. They are less vulnerable to manipulation and disappointment. They can act from reason rather than appetite. Comparison intensifies desire beyond reason. When lives are constantly displayed without context, the mind fills gaps with assumptions. Others appear more successful, more fulfilled, more certain. This perception fuels unnecessary longing and quiet bitterness. The Stoics addressed this centuries ago. They noted that envy arises not from what others have, but from how we judge our own condition. Change the judgment, and envy loses its grip. Ego complicates this further. Ego is not simply pride. It is the need to be seen in a certain way, to be admired, to be validated, to be confirmed as significant. This need drives many decisions that appear rational on the surface, but are emotionally reactive underneath. Careers pursued for applause rather than aptitude. Arguments sustained to protect image rather than truth. Exhaustion endured to avoid appearing inadequate. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that reputation is fragile and largely irrelevant to moral worth. Those who praise you today will forget you tomorrow. Those who criticize you are often projecting their own confusion. To live governed by these responses is to live externally. The Stoic seeks an internal standard, one that cannot be inflated by praise or diminished by insult. The habit of self-justification also grows from ego. When challenged, many instinctively defend rather than examine. Admitting error feels like a loss of status. This resistance prevents learning and hardens character. Stoicism takes the opposite view. To correct oneself is not humiliation. It is alignment. The willingness to revise judgments is a strength, not a weakness. Desire, when left untrained, also distorts the perception of time. Impatience grows. Progress feels too slow. Results feel insufficient. The present moment becomes a means to an imagined future, rather than a place of action. The Stoics insisted on returning attention to the present, not because the future does not matter, but because action only occurs now. Longing for outcomes does nothing to secure them. Voluntary discomfort was one method the Stoics used to recalibrate desire. This was not asceticism for its own sake, it was practice. By occasionally choosing simplicity, they reminded themselves that comfort was not essential to dignity, that hunger, cold, or inconvenience could be endured without collapse. This knowledge reduced fear. When you know you can endure less, you are less desperate to secure more. In modern terms, this translates to reducing dependency on constant stimulation, on emotional reassurance, on approval, on convenience. Each dependency narrows freedom. Each reduction restores it. This is not about rejecting progress or enjoyment, but about ensuring that enjoyment does not become a requirement for stability. Attachment also distorts relationships. When others are treated as sources of validation or security, rather than as fellow human beings, disappointment is inevitable. Expectations become unspoken demands. When unmet, they breed resentment. The Stoic approach emphasizes appreciation without possession, care without control, affection without illusion. Loss is inevitable. Relationships change, roles end, circumstances shift. When attachment is rigid, these changes feel catastrophic. When attachment is tempered by understanding impermanence, loss still hurt, but it does not shatter. Marcus Aurelius reflected often on transience. Not to become cold, but to love without clinging. The modern mind resists impermanence. It seeks permanence in careers, identities, ideologies, and narratives. When reality contradicts these constructions, distress follows. Stoicism does not offer permanence. It offers adaptability, the ability to adjust judgments when conditions change without losing coherence. Desire can be aligned with reason. Ambition can exist without obsession. Effort can be sustained without desperation. The difference lies in orientation. Do you act to express virtue or to secure outcomes? One is within your control. The other never fully is. When desire is governed, calm emerges naturally, not as indifference, but as proportion. Setbacks are measured. Successes are received without arrogance. The mind remains stable across variation. This stability is not accidental. It is the result of repeatedly choosing sufficiency over excess, clarity over craving. The coming year will not reward unchecked desire. It will amplify it until dissatisfaction becomes constant. Those who chase endlessly will feel perpetually behind. Those who practice restraint will find room to breathe. This is not because the world becomes easier, but because fewer things are allowed to dominate the mind. To correct desire is to reclaim agency. To loosen attachment is to prepare for change. To quiet ego is to see clearly. Without this work, attention alone is not enough. Discipline must extend inward to the judgments that decide what you want, why you want it, and what you believe it will give you. This work is subtle, often invisible, rarely praised, but it determines whether pressure produces growth or fracture, whether effort leads to dignity or exhaustion, whether the future feels threatening or simply uncertain, as it has always been. Stoic calm is not the absence of wanting, it is the absence of confusion about what is worth wanting at all. Life does not distribute hardship evenly, nor does it explain itself when it does so. Illness, loss, injustice, and failure arrive without regard for effort or intention. Many spend years resisting this fact, believing that suffering indicates personal failure or moral error. The Stoics rejected this interpretation. They saw hardship as a condition of existence, not a verdict on character. What distinguishes a person is not what happens to them, but how they respond when events escape their preferences. This response is not measured by emotion alone. Pain will arise, grief will arrive, anger will appear. Stoicism does not deny these reactions. It asks whether they are governed by reason or allowed to dictate conduct. Seneca wrote extensively about adversity, not from abstraction, but from experience. He understood that misfortune tests the internal order of the mind. When comfort is removed, whatever was supporting the self becomes visible. If dignity was built on status, its loss is devastating. If it was built on virtue, it remains intact. Modern culture often frames suffering as something to be eliminated at all costs. When it cannot be, it is treated as meaningless. This deepens despair. The Stoic position is different. Suffering has no inherent meaning, but it can reveal priorities, its illusions, and strengthen endurance if met correctly. It is not sought, but it is not wasted. Injustice is particularly difficult to accept. To see wrongdoing go unpunished, or effort unrewarded, provokes bitterness. The Stoics acknowledged this fully. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that expecting perfect fairness from the world is a misunderstanding of its nature. Justice in Stoicism begins with one's own actions, not with controlling outcomes beyond reach. This does not excuse passivity. Stoics are not indifferent to harm. They act where action is possible and appropriate. They resist wrongdoing without becoming consumed by rage. They pursue fairness without tying their peace to its immediate success. This balance is difficult, but necessary. Without it, moral effort collapses into exhaustion. Mortality sharpens all of this. The awareness that life is finite is often treated as a source of anxiety. The Stoics treated it as a source of clarity. When time is understood as limited, trivial conflicts lose weight. Performative outrage feels hollow. Delay loses its appeal. Attention shifts toward what is essential. Marcus Aurelius returned repeatedly to the thought of death, not morbidly, but practically. Every action gains seriousness when it may be the last of its kind. This awareness does not produce fear. It produces focus. It reminds the mind that dignity is expressed now, not later. Modern individuals often postpone living according to their values, waiting for stability or certainty. The Stoics saw this as a mistake. Certainty never arrives. Conditions are never perfect. Virtue is practiced within disorder, not after it resolves. To wait is to drift. Loss, when it comes, feels absolute. Yet, the Stoics observed that loss is always partial. What is taken is external. What remains is the capacity to choose one's response. This capacity is inviolable unless surrendered. Even in extreme circumstances, judgment remains. This is not a comforting thought. It is a demanding one. It removes excuses. Grief deserves respect. Stoicism does not rush it away. It allows the natural process to unfold without adding layers of self-pity or identity around it. To mourn is human. To define oneself permanently by loss is optional. The Stoic seeks to feel fully, then stand again. Fear of the future often intensifies in unstable times. Economic uncertainty, social fragmentation, and rapid change provoke the instinct to secure guarantees. The Stoics understood that guarantees do not exist. What exists is preparedness of character. A steady mind adapts more effectively than a fearful one. regardless of circumstances. Endurance is not passive, it is active maintenance of inner order under strain. It requires effort, repetition, and humility. No one is permanently resilient. Strength fluctuates, discipline compensates. On difficult days, the Stoic does less, but does not abandon principle. Many misunderstand Stoic acceptance as resignation. It is not. Acceptance concerns reality. As it is, action concerns what can be done within it. Confusing these leads either to futile resistance or apathetic withdrawal. Clarity distinguishes between the two. The coming years will not reward illusions. Systems will fail, promises will be broken, identities built on external markers will fracture. Those who have invested solely in these will feel destabilized. Those who have cultivated inner coherence will feel pressure, but not collapse. This coherence is built through daily alignment between judgment and action, saying less than you could, acting when necessary, enduring discomfort without complaint, correcting yourself without drama. None of this attracts attention. It does not trend. It does not announce itself. Yet it forms the core of a life that can withstand unpredictability. A person who understands impermanence is less shocked by change. A person who accepts fate does not waste energy resenting it. A person who values virtue above outcome remains intact when outcomes disappoint. Stoicism does not promise happiness, it promises steadiness. It offers a way to remain human without being ruled by fear, bitterness, or despair. It does not remove pain, but it prevents pain from becoming identity. As pressure increases, the question becomes simple: will difficulty reveal chaos within, or will it reveal structure? That structure cannot be assembled in crisis, then must be built beforehand, quietly, consistently, without expectation of recognition. This is the work of Stoicism, not as philosophy to admire, but as discipline to practice, not as escape from reality, but as preparation for it. The future does not ask for your predictions, it asks for your character. Whatever arrives will meet you as you are, not as you intend to be later. This is why the Stoics emphasized daily practice over distant goals. The mind you train now is the one you will rely on when pressure comes. Nothing in this reflection requires withdrawal from the world or rejection of modern life. It requires precision, fewer judgments, clearer values, a narrower focus on what actually belongs to you. When attention is disciplined, desire moderated, and hardship faced without illusion, life becomes simpler, even when it remains difficult. Stoicism is not a shield against pain, it is a framework for meeting pain without distortion. It removes the expectation that life should be easy or fair, and replaces it with the commitment to act well regardless. This shift does not make life smaller, it makes it manageable. The year ahead will reward those who are inwardly ordered, not with comfort or applause, but with stability. While others are pulled from one reaction to the next, you will retain the ability to pause, to judge clearly, and to choose deliberately. This is not because you are untouched by events, but because you are not ruled by them. Practice does not require perfection. It requires return to reason after emotion, return to principle after distraction, return to the present after anxiety pulls the mind forward. Each return strengthens the habit of self-command. If these reflections resonate, it is because they describe something already sensed, but not yet articulated. The pressure of modern life exposes what has always been true. Without inner discipline, freedom erodes. With it, even constraint can be endured with dignity. This channel exists to support that discipline, not through motivation or spectacle, but through steady reminders of what can be controlled and what cannot. If you choose to continue, do so without urgency. Let the ideas settle, apply them slowly, observe their effects,
There is no final state to reach, only a way of standing, calm, attentive, and aligned with reality as it is.